Everyone is hoping that Disney will learn from the success of K-Pop Demon Hunters. But what if I told you that it's not that Disney won't learn, but that they can't? In fact, I think that everyone is looking at the success of the movie all wrong, because no one is attributing the phenomenon the movie has caused to the right thing. I agree with people saying, see Disney, we want romance again. We want female characters who have flaws beyond being adorkable again. We want real villains again. But this is not digging deep enough. I have been incredibly disappointed by Disney's recent movie musicals, and it hurts that much more because I was inspired to become a professional musical theater performer because of Disney. And so I've been doing actual research to find out where their issues truly lie. And now I want to share what I found out about K-Pop Demon Hunters versus Disney and the big differences between them. And for me, this was really impactful and transformative, and so I hope it'll be the same for you. You'll understand what I mean when I get there, but I hope that what I found is something that we can include in our conversations going forward, because I feel like it's something that the discussion here is really missing. This is Calxiyn here to make you care, and thanks to all my patrons and YouTube members who support me so you guys can learn something new without having to comb through 30 different sources like I had to do. One of the interviews pertaining to my research on the downfall of the Disney movie musicals only had 11 views when I first found it, and so spreading this to as many people as possible is very important to me because on the last video I did about this topic, so many people said that they had no idea. But you may be wondering, if this is a video about Disney not learning from K-Pop Demon Hunters, why did I say that everyone is looking at the movie's success all wrong? Why not just jump into talking about Disney itself? Why open myself to getting hundreds of comments starting with, well, I'm not looking at things all wrong, you're wrong? There's two big reasons. Right out of the gate while doing research for this video, I was bombarded by news articles and videos going for the most shallow angle possible and pitting this movie against Elio. I do understand the temptation since it just released, and the New York Times did declare a while ago that Pixar is damaged as a big screen brand. But to me, this would be like saying what Genshin Impact can learn from Disney Dreamlight Valley just because they're both live service games. If you just looked up from doing your Genshin dailies, maybe you can let us know if there is a very broad lesson. And I'm sure for Elio, there is a broad lesson they could apply there too. But it frustrates me because animation is not a genre. It is a medium of storytelling. The offering or need these movies provide and the demographics that they cater to are completely different. If people are going to make the comparison, I at least wish that they would interrogate the deeper issues at Pixar that these movies are a result of, instead of the surface level, oh, it's because of the bead mouth type takes. There is something interesting to dig into here, with K-Pop Demon Hunters being everything that historically Pixar has looked down on, a magical, fairy tale-esque, female-led musical. Because the feud with DreamWorks and Disney is more well-known, people seem to forget that Pixar had a set of, in my opinion, borderline misogynistic internal rules about their storytelling style, and that this was created in direct opposition to the Disney princess musicals. They basically went, let's make animation, but for the boys, which may have been an underserved market at the time, but now every company does that. Pixar's movies today remind me of companies from 10 years ago trying to reheat their nachos and rip them off. Put a pin in Pixar for later, but my hot take from this video that you should totally go watch after this one is that Pixar was doomed from its inception. Can you really say you have your own identity if your creative philosophies and principles only exist in opposition to someone else's? Being rebellious and contrarian against Disney is fundamentally incompatible with them being a part of Disney. Especially when they won't even let their directors tell stories that challenge a status quo. Because instead the company must prioritize the fragile feelings of conservatives and bad faith internet grifters because they will get offended if they see a boy wearing a pink tank top. And even though Pixar has made compelling stories in the past, these stories are still a result of a boys' club atmosphere and creative philosophies that need to evolve. And the sad part is that they did try. They tried to redefine their brand with stuff like Soul, Luca, and Turning Red, but then COVID happened, and Turning Red in particular got thrown under the bus. All of that to say that Pixar has bigger problems on a fundamental level that make bolder aesthetic choices, though maybe that's true, isn't going to fix. But YouTubers and journalists aren't talking about that. And Pixar has been a giant red herring since internally at Netflix, they do not give a fuck. They are considering K-Pop Demon Hunters to be coming for Disney's lunch, not Pixar's. Luckily, just as I was finishing my script, The Wrap gave me more evidence to support this, releasing an article stating that Netflix is referring to the project as its Frozen, or Disney Princess franchise. But even though we are getting closer now, I feel like the general discussion, especially by the media again, is very, very shallow. When comparisons between K-Pop Demon Hunters and Disney are being made, I feel like there's way too much focus on these audience-assigned AO3 tags almost that K-Pop Demon Hunters has. And I do think that asking the question of what is resonating with audiences here, what do audiences say that they want, is something worth discussing. I mean, my first degree was in marketing and communications after all. And speaking of what the people want, here's a list of everything that I agree about, but we would be here all day if I talked about all these points. So if anyone's curious, I do agree. But my belief is that if you gave this checklist to Disney and told them to make a story that has all of these things, that addresses everything that we want, it would still be just as mediocre as Moana 2 or as horrendous as Wish. This is something I really feel strongly about based on my research, that even if a fairy godmother descended from the stars and gave them this masterpiece of a story and just told them, make this thing happen, it would be butchered by the Pixar-influenced production process and the storytelling style introduced when John Lasseter took charge at the time of Tangled. And even though a regular movie may fare better, I will dive into why this method of working, which was stupid to begin with and has only gotten more dysfunctional with time, is ruining Disney's musicals. What really frustrates me is that Wish and Moana 2 are not bad movies that just so happen to have shitty or mediocre music. They are bad musical movies. Tangled, Frozen, Encanto, and Moana were not successful because of this process. They were successful in spite of it. And you may think that's just semantics, but it's not. When in the company right now, there seems to be a prevalent mentality that they are making movies that just so happen to include songs, as if the music doesn't influence everything else about the story, not that they are choosing the medium of musical theater to tell their stories. When any musical theater legend would have told you that we make musicals because there is no other way that the story can be told. They just don't get it. They don't have that vision of seeing animation as the last great place to do a Broadway musical like Howard Ashman did. From a corporate perspective, it is true that K-Pop Demon Hunters made a lot of smart decisions in its aesthetic, its setting, its theme, character design, and so much more that I haven't even gotten into. But none of these tropes or decisions would have mattered if it wasn't for what I'm going to share with you. So now I can make my case for why I think Disney is really failing, and why I think that K-Pop Demon Hunters' biggest achievement isn't actually anything we saw on screen at all. So if you haven't seen my video about the downfall of the Disney movie musical, don't worry. I mean, it would mean a lot to me if you were to check it out after this one, but in order to compare K-Pop Demon Hunters to old Disney and current Disney, I am going to summarize that information for you. During the Disney Renaissance, Howard Ashman was sent the script for The Little Mermaid and wrote down all his musical character and dramatic suggestions. Then afterwards, Katzenberg, Clements, Musker, and Ashman revised the story format together to make The Little Mermaid into a musical with a Broadway-style storytelling structure. Beauty and the Beast was going terribly as a non-musical period drama, but then, just like The Little Mermaid, Ashman and Menken joined the director, screenplay writer, and producer in retooling the film's script. It was also Disney's first animated film to utilize a completed screenplay prior to storyboarding. This was not exclusive to Howard Ashman's time, and in that video, I share some stories from The Lion King, Hunchback, and Pocahontas, particularly about Stephen Schwartz. But I cannot stress this enough. Retooling the scripts together and the songwriters having a seat at that table. And as I said back then, that doesn't mean that there aren't compromises or changes. Even the Renaissance movies have deleted scenes and cut concepts. There are entire books about that. But everyone being on the same page very early, I think, is integral to the film's success. Let's take a look at what happens when everyone is not on the same page because there is no page. Glenn Slater about Tangled. The script would change on a weekly basis. Half of what we were working on got thrown out. The songwriting duo for Frozen says, Frozen was still being built at the same time as we were writing the music. You have one draft and then 6 weeks later it falls to the floor, then you have to start all over again. We had 27 songs at one point for Frozen. They laugh, putting their arms around one another and mock grimacing as they remember the long hours and demanding schedule. We really had to stick to the calendar or we just wouldn't make it. We were in the basement of our house writing for 9 months trying not to freak out. About Moana, you'd write a song, put it forward. They'd change the story, so you'd change the song. Adjust the story, adjust the song. 3 years of doing this. Jennifer Lee, Julia Michaels, and Benjamin Rice about Wish. Jennifer Lee says Julia wrote this wish before I had even written the script. Julia Michaels about I'm a Star says, actually, when we first wrote it, we didn't have storyboards. We had a little bit of a script, so there wasn't that much to go off of other than these meetings that we had together. Benjamin Rice, this is completely different. Working with Julia on songs that need to be created at the same time as the filmmakers are homing in on the story and working on the animation. I am being so serious, you guys. I feel like every time I work on a script and I have to revisit these quotes, that 5 years has been taken off my lifespan. Like, I'm just immediately exhausted. So if you didn't know any of that and I have already taught you something, let's make my suffering mean something by you subscribing. Okay, but can I just say that speaking that sentence aloud reinforces how batshit this is? Why? Why do the songs need to be created at the same time as the filmmakers are homing in on the story and working on the animation? Like, call me crazy, but it may be better to home in on the story first. Especially when you are making a musical where these songs push the story forward, which the songwriters cannot do if you don't have a story because you don't have a script. Beauty and the Beast is the best animated musical of all time. Argue with the wall, I think that that is objectively true, and they had what? A fully completed screenplay! This cannot possibly be more cost or time effective. How could it be when you're burning money by having songwriters and animators redo things that they otherwise wouldn't have to redo if the script wasn't falling apart constantly? And that's without even considering what that does to morale. If this does not convince you, go watch the Frozen 2 documentary. It shows levels of incompetence and mismanagement that I am still surprised that Disney is comfortable displaying to the public. Like me, you will watch in horror as Jennifer Lee says she is frustrated that it's an extraordinary amount of work to get the music and the script to work together, and then pushes Show Yourself under the bus as the problem with this part of the story. Despite the fact that this part of the story only has a problem because she refuses to give the Lopez's the one piece of information that they are asking for in order to make this song work. Who is the voice calling Elsa? Despite the Lopez's having more compelling ideas than what we got, this voice was not decided on until 4 months before the movie released. The voice calling Elsa is what the entire story hinges on, including its themes. If you change that, it becomes completely different story, and they didn't have it decided from the beginning? And the songwriters had to take the blame without the power to take the reins and make that decision that would best serve the payoff that they were responsible for delivering through song. And on that topic, an interview I found with Glenn Slater really opened my eyes, that he talks about how Howard Ashman has the presence and charisma of a director, the experience of a producer, and a sort of power structure that is willing to put the reins in your hands and let you ride. And he expresses his frustration that he is compared to Howard Ashman, but does not get the same opportunities that Howard Ashman had. And as I said in my original video, does that mean I think they should have handed the reins off to, say, Julia Michaels? No! It was understood during the Renaissance that the directors, songwriters, and scriptwriters needed to collaborate together and that their roles were equally important. Because when you are making a musical, the songs are the screenplay. This isn't a collage where you can just take clippings from one magazine here and a completely different magazine there and put it together on top of what you already have. Musical theater is a team sport. But now the opportunity to retool the script together is gone. The scripting, the songwriting, the animating, it's just all happening at once and stuff is falling apart as they're creating it. But it isn't just a matter of opportunity. It's also a matter of creative philosophy or attitude, and how these two things feed off of each other. Did changing how production works perpetuate this attitude, or did the creative philosophy or attitude change how production works? And you'll see what I mean. This is where Pixar and the catastrophic damage it did to Disney comes in, starting with Tangled. Where Glenn Slater was told, your job is not to come up with new ideas of what they want to do, it's just to execute the ideas they already have. Steven Schwartz had already left the project because of creative differences, and Alan Menken even talks about how he felt like he had to zip his mouth. I found this buried article from 2011, and so if Glenn Slater's story didn't already make you feel frustrated like it did for me, let me read this to you. I'll let you read the question. So this is Alan Menken. Respectful, yeah, and we're separated by at least 20 years of age. People want to establish their own ground, so when you bring in the sort of old master, that can be a little bit daunted. So on one hand, they're respectful. On the other hand, they go, no, Alan, we don't want that. We want this. And there are times where I have to go, zip's mouth. There's a place in the movie where I had a concept for the score. We had initially had a song for the character Flynn, where he sang a sea shanty. He was singing about what he wanted in life, and his father used to sing him this lullaby. So it's a lusty sea shanty, and he sings it wistfully. And then later on, she sings it to him in a tender way. And the song got cut. Okay, fine. But when we meet Flynn, I said I can almost see this being a Robin Hood moment and really going for that swashbuckling, big thematic chase. And so I wrote the cut that way, and the director said, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, no, 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 no. There was a lot of nervousness, and there was a temptation to get defensive and say, guys, this is what we talked about. Sorry, I'll try it again, ... exclamation point. I read this last night and I was fucking flabbergasted, like I'm not even shitting you guys. What the fuck do you mean that Alan fucking Menken feels like he has to zip's mouth? And there's a whole other story about how Alan Menken played song after song for members of the Tangled team without them even showing him the lantern concepts first. And they complained it was too Renaissance-y and too Broadway-y, which is so infuriating. But from this conversation came the revelation that they saw the song in competition with their visuals, saying, we want this all to be about those lanterns, and we don't want it to be about Alan's big ballad. You are making a musical! Disney creative teams of the past were not so insecure. Their visuals rose to the occasion that the songs provided. It is not in the spirit of what collaboration or musical theater is to treat the songwriters like tools who have to zip their mouths and execute your ideas, or for you to want all the glory to yourself and ask them to make their own work worse. Songwriters are storytellers. Everything should be in service of the story first, not everything revolving around the visuals. It's not a tech demo, this is a musical! And in my original video, I talk about how Disney is more obsessed with realism these days than telling a good story. And this started with Pixar and Tangled because they wanted to prove to their competitors that they could make a visually stunning 3D fairy tale. All throughout production and press interviews, they were hyping up, oh, the lantern scene is gonna be the most beautiful thing that you've ever seen. But meanwhile, I See the Light got panned by critics for being shallow and generic, which reflects poorly on Glenn Slater and Alan Menken, even though they were capable of much more. Imagine if Howard Ashman was told to just execute the boring Beauty and the Beast period drama brainlessly. It's ridiculous. And if the songwriters feel like they have to shut up, what happens when a director or a screenwriter has an idea that is objectively bad for a musical? And the songwriters are just told that their job is to execute that shitty idea. We actually know, because even though Lin-Manuel Miranda got a bit more freedom working on Encanto, the directors refusing to listen to him and wasting everyone's time is treated like a funny story, when this is disrespectful and rude. The unique collaboration also pays off when a song isn't the right choice for a particular scene. Bush found this out the hard way. This is one of the same guys, I believe, that worked on Tangled. If an area doesn't want to be a song, you can't make it be a song, he explains. One of the early things I fought for was a song, and I kept telling everyone, it's gotta be in there. Lynn kept saying, I don't think it will work. So he tried a version of it, we screened it, and it super didn't work. The movie will tell you if it's song-worthy or not. But sometimes you have to go on that journey to find out. Do you? The movie will tell you if a moment is song-worthy? It sounds like to me, 3-time Tony winner, 5-time Grammy winner Lin-Manuel Miranda told you it wasn't gonna work, and you didn't listen. The movie didn't tell you that the song wasn't going to work. He did, and you made him do it anyway. What a waste of everyone's time. And now it's time to take that pin out about Pixar because I lay the blame at Pixar's feet. Some of you are not going to like this because I'm right, but Pixar's creative philosophies were built on immature, Peter Pan-esque, man-child type mentalities like, oh, girls have cooties, fairy tales, and breaking out in a song is stupid. Their femininity and even the way girls play with toys ends up being the butt of the joke. You can see this immaturity in the stuff like, of course boys will want to go see it. She rejects love. She's not like the other princesses. She has a bow and there are bears fighting in it. She's not like the other girls. And it is this kind of mentality that facilitates an environment where producers can openly talk about how the mention of princesses, kingdoms, and God forbid, mother-daughter relationships make his eyes glaze over and are all words he doesn't like to think about. They had internal rules like no singing, no happy little village, no magic, no love story, no princesses. John Lasseter being placed in charge of the studio didn't just change how they work, but Pixar staff, their rules, their storytelling sensibilities and creative philosophies, their immaturity and their egos were brought on to work on Rapunzel. Which, if you didn't know, got turned into Tangled because think of the men and their fragile masculinity if they go see a movie called Rapunzel. Let me know in the comments what you think the Little Mermaid would be called if it got the Tangled Frozen Wish treatment naming convention that we have today. You also have them publicly shitting on the advice a songwriter that Disney had consulted during Toy Story had given them. And this seems to be a pattern. One of them retells this as a funny story during his TED Talk. There is no joke here, it's only, that person was stupid, ha ha, we were right. And I want two things to be very clear. One, I don't think that Toy Story or the other movies after needed to be musicals. And two, even though it's frustrating, I don't think that these people are rubbing their hands together like supervillains. I mean, maybe John Lasseter, but like, this is what they're willing to say in public. Shouldn't that set off an alarm bell for somebody? Think about the attitude that trickles down from the top, that festers in this company culture when the moral to this story is the songwriters don't know what they were talking about, we were right. There is this self-admitted arrogance and stubbornness that just because they were right this one time, it means that they always know better. They aren't willing to to listen until the movie tells them that a song doesn't belong there, instead of listening to or having mutual respect for the other artists that are working on this project together. It's so funny to me that they're so snarky about magic and fairy tales, where they're the ones that are buying into this like misty tingle woo-woo bullshit that the movie is a real entity that'll show you the way if you just look hard enough. And about Pixar, Alan Menken said, as several Pixar employees being in charge for Disney and the sensibilities being changed, Menken thought of it as his biggest creative challenge. He said that finding a way that we could wed musical theater storytelling with the Pixar style of storytelling was primary. Shouldn't the company called Disney focus on Disney style of storytelling? He goes on to say in multiple interviews that Tangled is a hybrid, that it could become a musical if people respond to the songs that way, but it could also be something that exists without songs. Musicals are not supposed to be able to exist without songs. If you have made a musical like that, you have failed. Because musical theater is not a genre, it is a medium of storytelling. And by the way, even though production was a little bit different for Moana 2, Mufasa, and Snow White, this is also why those movies do not work. On one end, we have Julia Michaels not even having scripts to look at, and on the other end, we have the scripts being fully written without the songs, and then the songwriters being told, yeah, your song goes here, good luck! And the script not getting retooled to account for that song. For Moana 2, because it was originally a TV show, TV shows tend to work a little bit different. And the Frozen duo actually talks about this, but in reference to WandaVision as well, where they say that instead of being an architect, it was more like decorating the lobby. And I can't speak to WandaVision, it's also not like a musical, so you know, it might get away with a little bit more. This is also why I have the hot take that TV shows can be musical, but they can't be musicals. Anyway, this is why the songs in Snow White and Mufasa do not matter. The script was written to function without the songs, and so it does. These songs don't influence the story whatsoever because it's not allowed to. So you have these songs where the audience would expect emotional progression or a decision being made or any kind of payoff, but instead, the songs don't take us on a journey. We just stew in a vague feeling with no transformation, no reveal, no resolution, because how can they have one if that doesn't line up with the script just picking up where we left off? Once again, I do recommend my previous video because I haven't even scratched the surface, really. This script had to be cut down so much because I wanted to stick to what was important, but based on the research from back then and what we've heard since about Mufasa and Snow White, I see two extremes here. There's doing everything at the same time, which is stupid and even at its best causes unnecessary hardship on everyone in production, not just the songwriters, but everyone else as well. Again, we see that in the Frozen 2 documentary. And then on the other end, more so with the live action films, we see song go here without retooling the script, which is antithetical to what a musical is. Now we can finally talk about K-Pop Demon Hunters, and if you've made it this far, thank you for caring, thank you for supporting my channel. I know that, that was a lot to get through, and so you may be wondering, where's the K-pop in the K-pop part of this video? But I did feel like it was really important to go through all that, and you guys will get what you came here for. You'll understand why. But if you want to take your support a step further, you can bestow a like on this video, leave a comment, or share it with a friend that you may think will enjoy it. All of that tells YouTube, this is a channel worth watching, but I wouldn't be able to do this at all without my patrons and my YouTube members, so thanks to them again for allowing me to make videos like this, videos that matter no matter how many people see them. And thanks so much to Butsy Chen for the super thanks. I wasn't sure how to say your username, I'm sorry, but this really meant a lot to me, especially because I did want the Disney movie musical video to do a little bit better. Not just because of the revenue, even though it would have been nice considering how much, I worked on it and everything, but just because I wanted more people to know, and so I really dreamed of one day this video will get 1 million views, So to see people still coming back to it and appreciating it 6 months later, when in my head I feel like that dream is dead, it just really, really means a lot to me. If you like the sound of getting early access to my videos, having your say for what I make next, and supporting all of my content, including my own future original song projects, consider joining them. But now let me pay off what I promised and what we have been progressing towards. In this Mashable article, they say, before a single hook or beat drop was written, the team built a story-first blueprint. Every emotional arc, character trait, and turning point had to be mapped out to determine where music could elevate the narrative, and what kind of song each moment demanded. Genre, tempo, top line, and even who should carry the course all stemmed from that scaffolding. Eisendrath says, early on, we really decided that there are two kinds of songs in this film. One is diegetic, live performances that the characters are aware of. The other is more internal monologue, things that the characters can't say out loud, but that come through in song. K-pop doesn't usually do that second part, storytelling through song, so that was an opportunity. We had to create lyrics that sounded like the characters and moved the story forward. We created prompt sheets in collaboration with the directors, monologues from the characters' POV, notes on structure and timing, a vibe board of K-pop influences, and then spent time shepherding both the songwriting and how it interacted with the picture. But my goal and role was really to let these artists create the thing that only they can create. I am not a Korean K-pop artist, so I really wanted to understand their world. You can also read here that they wrote the songs to accomplish what musical theater songs do, while keeping that pop music feeling. Netflix actually released an article where the music producer even calls Golden an I Want song, and they say for the opening that he took inspiration from the Jet song from West Side Story, which I think that that's really cool, and what a weird sort of thing. I wouldn't have thought of that at all. It wouldn't have even been in my top 5, and so clearly you can see that there is an understanding and respect for musical theater here, and pulling from other sources like that for the inspiration. Also, I should mention, Eisendrath has a film and musical theater background, which seems to be very, very important as we keep going. Because in this Rolling Stone article, they said, both of the songwriters credit the strength of their collaboration to the vision of the film's directors and executive music producer Ian Eisendrath, which allows all of the songs to do double duty as bangers on the charts, and also necessary narrative devices on screen. I also found this answer about how Eisendrath was brought onto the project to be very interesting. He was told the Black Label is on board to write songs, but they're going to need a lot of support in terms of how to make these songs filmic. Also, the directors and producer really need someone to develop musical language and to figure out how songs fit into the narrative. Can you guys tell that this all makes me really, really happy, and we aren't even done yet? How was this process different for the songwriters who are used to K-pop songwriting camps? Also, can I just say, I want to know more about that. I want to go to K-pop songwriting summer camp. But anyway, we spent about 3 years working on these songs. The first year was spent beating out what these songs needed to be for story, for character, for music, vibe, and how all of that fits together. Because you're not just thinking of a song, you're thinking about a musical arc for the entire film! Thank you! Oh my god! So that work was going on one side, and then on the other side it was figuring out how we can all work together in the way that all of these writers work best. All of these writers, not just songwriters, because songwriters are what? Storytellers! They are the writers of the screenplay too! And my favorite part, in many ways, K-Pop Demon Hunters is a musical that hides many of the conventions of that genre beneath the outer layer of catchy K-pop tracks. And what are those conventions? That a song does not start and end in the same place story-wise, that the audience can feel like that it is critical to the story. Even with a performance song, we always want to make sure we're using the real estate to shed light on story and character. I could kiss this man! What a massive difference between this and everything that we discussed with Disney! There is no, we want this all to be about those visuals, not to be about Ellen's big ballad in here! To shed light on story and characters! Story first! And even though a lot of demos got made and things still got cut, do you know how happy I am to hear someone say that a song does not start and end in the same place story-wise? Oh my god, like the bar has just been on the inevitable, like all these concepts that we talk about on the channel that like nobody else is talking about in these Disney interviews. They're too busy going, well, oh, the movie will tell us if a spot is song-worthy and whatever the fuck, right? Like if I were Disney, I would be offering this man the moon on a string to come in there and fix their shit. And what is so hilarious about this, you guys, is that he has worked for Disney. He worked on the new Snow White, but even though he is everywhere giving interviews for KPop Demon Hunters, I cannot find a single interview with him that isn't just 20 seconds on the red carpet or something. Even Pasek and Paul, like I could not find anything of substance, and maybe it's just because there's like too little interest in asking these questions. Like the journalists aren't gonna write articles that aren't gonna get clicks anyway because nobody cares about Snow White, but it makes you wonder if Disney has realized that these songwriters were being a little bit too honest, and so that's why we haven't been able to find anything. But to me, this clearly proves that this isn't a problem with the talent. This guy, he's not like Barlow and Bear, where they had to get songwriting books, basic songwriting books from Lin-Manuel Miranda, right? And so clearly this person is competent, but were they handed the reins to be able to do what they did on KPop Demon Hunters with Snow White? I feel like based on what we know for the live action, that it's Song Go Here, I feel like the answer is no, especially when they're talking about how they perfected a pipeline approach for KPop Demon Hunters that they can use for sequels and the like. You have to wonder what he would have to say about the pipeline that Disney and Snow White has. And I find this to be so beautiful. Everything shaped everything, and that is what is so cool about developing a music-driven movie. The depth of the story required the songs to go there. The lyrics had to forward story, but the songs also informed animation and plot. I would talk about this for an hour if you guys would let me, but what valuable insight that I hope that you guys will really take to heart like I did. You cannot achieve that with Song Go Here. You cannot achieve that with your job is just to execute the ideas they already have. Collaboration, creativity, vision, respect, story informing songs, songs informing animation and plot. Like this interview literally healed something in me. I hope that now you understand why I had to harp on Disney's production stories for so long. And it just occurred to me now that some of you may be like, but Cal, of course when they're being interviewed, they're going to talk about the process positively. But I raise you the fact that like none of what I talked about in the Disney production stuff was secret information. It's not like I have a secret informant who like gave me a leak or something. This is literally what they were saying back in 2010, back in 2013, like nobody noticed it. The positive stories that they do have are sandwiched in between these negative ones. And it's like they've been waving the red flag all of this time and just like nobody picked it up. I don't know why. And this is why I said it was an Ouroboros, that Disney's pipeline is exacerbating the negative attitudes towards incorporating the musical elements, but also the negative attitudes influence the pipeline and what people think is important when making a movie musical. And this proves to me that things do not have to be this way, no matter what excuse they give you. Oh, well, it's not the Renaissance anymore. Oh, well, 3D is different. KPop Demon Hunters kills any excuse that Disney could have. When you work with other people, it needs to become their story as well as yours. The way you get a masterpiece is everyone contributing their unique talents and skills to the final picture and being able to give themselves authentically to that story instead of being told, song go here, or to execute ideas like robots. How can there be a little piece of the artist within this film, within this story, if you will not let them be storytellers or be artists? And that leads me into what may be the most important lesson for this video. One or two people were surprised at my deep love for K-pop Demon Hunters, and I think it's because they wrongly conflated my hatred for Disney going the pop route for projects where it doesn't make any fucking sense, with hating Wish simply for having pop music. What I hate is that pop music is not a choice in Wish or Snow White, and that instead of developing a unique musical language that works for that particular story, pop was used as this dirty and fast way to instant success. It is an airbag meant to cushion the blow if the movie bombs. The Little Mermaid and Aladdin and Beauty and the Beast all sound really different from each other, even though it's the same composer and the same lyricist. And that's because they knew that a musical language had to be developed to suit the film. There is no creative or artistic reason why Snow White, which was originally inspired by operetta and is still set in fairy tale Germany, to have recruited Pasek and Paul to poorly plagiarize themselves and reheat The Greatest Showman's nachos. It is impossible for Wish to be a celebration of 100 years of Disney in Disney fairy tales while tossing aside the songwriters who saved Disney from bankruptcy. But the musical language of K-pop Demon Hunters is anything but cheap. It is sincere in how they use musical theater storytelling conventions in the background while celebrating K-pop, which means something to the narrative and the characters and their lives. This is a matter of sincerity. The Pixar style of storytelling is fundamentally incompatible with the idea of a musical because musicals are vulnerable and sincere and unapologetic. But you'll notice that Tangled and Frozen and even Moana and Encanto, though again not anywhere near as bad as Wish and Moana 2, are constantly apologizing to the audience for being what they are. Pixar's approach of, "Hi, that's me, you're probably wondering how I died," and "opening number, that's stupid, I'm gonna do meta commentary about how ridiculous fairy tales are," which started with Tangled, is so deeply rooted that Disney cannot celebrate themselves because they must wink at the cynical audience and make fun of themselves to be relevant. Because this is the way that audiences are now. But is that really true? And Pixar does have sincere moments, but they are buried under a lot of snark and immaturity and low-effort humor and Marvelisms to get there, whereas Disney was built on sincerity ever since Snow White. Fairy tales and musicals work so well together, I think, because it has to have that sincerity in common. Suspending your disbelief when you see a pumpkin turn into a carriage or a puppet become a real boy is not so different from believing a character when they break out into song, that is just natural to them. And so if someone makes a joke about how stupid it all is, it just ruins that magic. But K-pop Demon Hunters never apologizes for being what it is. Instead of belittling itself to make a non-musical theater or K-pop fan audience more comfortable, they use diegetic music to slowly ease people in and endear the audience to the idea into this world. And this provides something that Disney's own legendary animator said every film needs to be built on in order to be successful, but it's something that Disney has forgotten. You see this thing in every single element, whether it's lighting, environments, character designs, dialogue, and of course in the music. And you cannot get this thing through "your job is to execute the ideas they already have" or "song go here." You can only get this thing if everyone is able to sincerely pour themselves into the work. So what is it? Warmth is the hallmark of Disney films. Warmth in personality, in relationships, and in story construction. And musical theater songs took Disney's concept of building in warmth and transformed it, building in warmth and darkness in the most memorable way possible, through a song that we can take with us wherever we go. So when I talk about what Disney has forgotten, it is warmth. And so if you have been watching the movie over and over and over again, and you're not the type of person who usually does that, like me and Hunter, you have thought this movie was good, it had a lot of problems, we talked about the problems in another video, but what is so compelling about this? What is resonating with us so much more than, say, for example, for me, Rapunzel's my favorite Disney princess, but I never go back and rewatch the movie. I may rewatch the TV show, I listen to some of the songs sometimes, but usually I listen to the songs from the TV series a lot more. I have never rewatched Tangled as much as I have rewatched this. So what is it? What is so addictive almost about K-pop Demon Hunters? And I think it is that warmth. Modern Disney has these pockets of warmth, but they don't allow the moments to exist without a character cracking a joke at the expense of the older films or making some sort of meta commentary like, oh, if you have this, this, and that, you're a princess, you can't marry a man you just met, whatever. There is no warmth in that snark, in cynicism, in making things middling and safe. There is no warmth in music that was only made for the sake of marketing, while forgetting that they literally were not prepared for Part of Your World to be the hit that it was, and so they didn't prep a radio version for it or send it out or anything. They had to scramble to get it. That was the thing that was topping the charts, a musical theater song. Not whatever Wish and Moana 2 are doing. And boy, does that statement for the Moana 2 girl being like, oh, give it a month, all the kids will be singing it, look really stupid now when they have failed. And maybe part of that was Lin-Manuel Miranda having to teach them what an I Want song is. Meanwhile, we see Eisendrath perfectly understand everything that a musical needs in order to succeed. And that the K-pop Demon Hunters team, it's not just that they understand, they have this true passion for musicals that I just feel like is so hard to come by. And the Disney Villain Bible adds that for great warmth, you also need great darkness. But because Disney cares more about making good role models compared to compelling protagonists, and for their villains have been straying away from making truly evil, menacing characters who cause suffering, injustice, and hardship, the heroes have no internal flaws to overcome, no emotions to struggle with, and nothing externally that is menacing or dark enough to really fight against, to be that light in the darkness. But when I say that Disney can't learn from K-pop Demon Hunters, it's not just because it would take these radical changes to restructure the pipeline, but because Disney made a choice a long time ago to have their cake and eat it too. That since Pixar and DreamWorks have been mocking them, Disney decided to preemptively defend themselves by doing it first in every single new movie, while also still wanting to make the fairy tales that they're known for. And as I mentioned earlier, you have to wonder, is an environment where everything that the creative teams loved and grew up with, fair game to be mocked, going to encourage sincerity in storytelling? If there is this mandate for self-deprecation in the movies themselves, and outside of those movies, even people like Alan Menken are gonna be shot down by directors saying, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, no, 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 which is so fucking rude, by the way. If people are saying that their eyes glaze over at the mention of princesses, kingdoms, magic, and might I remind you, mother-daughter relationships, that is something that they don't like hearing. Why would anyone even risk sincerity? Why would anyone feel comfortable pitching something sincere? There are just too many interests now, and they will try everything before they try that sincerity. I mean, when you think about it, they already have, right? They actionified the names of the fairy tales. They injected this snark into the scripts. They've added all this meta commentary about themselves to appease people that were writing bad faith BuzzFeed articles in the first place. You know, to appeal to this fake, performative feminism. And now on the other end, they are sanding down compelling themes in fear of alienating bigots. They are manufacturing characters so parents don't have anything to complain about and won't have anything to criticize, and the list just goes on, and of course they tried the pop music. This is a quote from Glenn Keane after he resigned from Disney, his experiences during the production of Tangled influencing his decision, saying, I did work on it for 5 years, but it came at a time where there were so many changes in management, everything just kept changing, and there would be another version of the story. There's so many interests in a big company, and I experienced that very much with Rapunzel, how many different focuses of management and interest were in the changes of that story. And he said that he wanted to live creatively without walls. And if losing Glen Keane, who had been there since before the Renaissance, who was mentored by Disney's 9 old men, if losing him after he spent 37 years there wasn't the wake-up call, I really don't know what would be. Who will allow the directors, screenwriters, songwriters, and everyone else in between to live creatively without walls? Even though Eisendrath is not Sony or Netflix, and even though there's always going to be capitalism and bureaucracy and stakeholders and bullshit, something he said gave me a lot of hope for the future of the animated musical in a way that nothing else has been able to. Looking back on his experience on K-Pop Demon Hunters, Eisendrath admitted that one of the things that really surprised him on this film was how it proved to him that everyone can be and has the innate ability to be a storyteller. To live creatively without walls. Maybe it starts with the walls built between us as different types of artists. And not only do we need someone like Eisendrath to come in and do that, develop the language so that can happen between us, but we also need to become that person. Because we need to tear down the walls that we put around ourselves too. We need to stop saying, oh, I'm just a whatever your role happens to be. And we cannot believe in our innate ability as storytellers without sincerity and fostering and encouraging that same sincerity in others. Because how can we challenge the pipelines and the status quo and the way things are done if we don't believe in ourselves to begin with? This has been Calxiyn caring way too much, and I hope now you care too to share this message and live creatively without walls.